staff and students. Welcome to the W Remembrance Ceremony of 2022. This morning, we commemorate Remembrance Day with a special memorial service for the Canadians who lost their lives in the fight for freedom and peace. My name is Drew Neal, and I'm a Canadian of Irish and English descent. Before we begin the Remembrance Day Ceremony, we take this moment to connect with the land we are standing on. We acknowledge that where we gather to learn, work, and play, the Tawasim and Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations and all of the Coast Salish peoples have for thousands of years lived on these traditional, shared, and unceded territories. We are grateful to have the opportunity to build new relationships with the First Peoples here, one based on honor, compassion, and respect. This journey of healing and reconciliation is more than hollow words and a land acknowledgement. We believe that there is hope when a community works together, seeking to unlearn a colonial system and begin to relearn with Indigenous ways of knowing. In a special ceremony like today's, we offer respect and gratitude for the contributions Indigenous veterans have made to Canada and the world.
My name is Christy Lind, and I'm a Canadian of Filipino and Norwegian descent. Indigenous Canadian author Richard Wagamese once said, "All that we are is story. From the moment we are born to the time we continue on our spirit journey, we are involved in the creation of the story of our time here. It is what we arrive with. It is all we leave behind. We are not the things we accumulate. We are not the things we deem important. We are story, all of us. What comes to matter then is the creation of the best possible story we can while we're here. You, me, us, together. When we can do that and we take the time to share those stories with each other, we get bigger inside. We see each other. We recognize our kinship. We can change the world, one story at a time." It has been 104 years since the guns fell silent at the conclusion of hostilities associated with the First World War. It has been over 77 years since the Second World War. It has been 69 years since the raging combat of the Korean War. 31 years ago, Canadians served overseas in the Persian Gulf and the Balkan states in Europe. 21 years ago, Canadians answered the call to serve in Afghanistan and Iraq. Canadians have also served overseas in Mali, Somalia, and Libya, and in countless operations as allies with the UN and North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It is difficult to calculate the Canadian costs in all armed conflict from 1914 onward, but the total loss would be around over 115,600,000, and countless more wounded. While these numbers are staggering and important, numbers alone cannot tell the entire story. We connect to the past through the stories that have been left with us.
My name is Ajit, and I'm a Canadian of Punjabi descent.
My name is Harlan, and I am a Canadian of Punjabi descent, and this is a story of an extraordinary Canadian. Tommy Prince was born on October 25th, 1915 in Petersfield, Manitoba, as part of the Broken Head Band of Ojibwe Nation. Prince learned to hunt and trap from his father at an early age. From age 5 to 16, he attended the Alcorn Indian Residential School. As a survivor of the school, Prince joined the Army Cadets and had the opportunity to demonstrate his skills as a marksman. Prince was rejected from the Canadian military school several times, but was finally accepted in June of 1940. Originally enlisted in the Canadian Parachute Battalion, Prince was ultimately posted to the Canadian Special Service Battalion.
He was among a select group of Canadian soldiers sent to train with an American unit to form a specialized assault team. They became the first special service force known to the enemy as the Devil's Brigade. Prince was involved in several dangerous missions in Italy and France, where he was able to demonstrate his skill and bravery in battle. Following the conclusion of the Second World War, Prince was summoned to Buckingham Palace, and George VI decorated him with a military medal. On behalf of the American president, the Silver Star. After the war, he returned to Canada where he was not welcomed home as a hero. As an Indigenous man, he was not allowed to vote in federal elections and was refused the same benefits as other Canadian veterans.
After working as an advocate for Indigenous rights and lobbying to bring necessary change to the Indian Act, in the face of unemployment and discrimination, he re-enlisted in the military and served Canada in the Korean War. Prince did 2 tours in Korea, again demonstrating bravery and heroism.
When he returned to his civilian life after the Korean War, Prince would marry and have 5 children. His health was in decline, and he had difficulty maintaining a job, and eventually turned to alcohol to cope. Prince would not only spend his final years living in a Salvation Army shelter before passing away at the age of 62 at Deer Lodge Hospital in Winnipeg on November 1977.
Prince's funeral was attended by over 500 people, including friends, family, the Lieutenant Governor of Manitoba, and councils representing France, Italy, and the United States. The service ended with members of his home reserve chanting the death song of a warrior.
For all of his service, Prince was awarded 11 medals, making him the most decorated Indigenous soldier to Canadian history. The Department of National Defense has given him a name to a program, the Sergeant Tommy Prince Army Training Initiative, designed to assist Indigenous Canadians enlisting in the Army as Canadians.
Thomas George Prince survived 11 years in the Canadian residential school system and was still willing to sacrifice himself as a Canadian for a future he believed in. We live in the echo of his heroism.
The following poem was written by Solomon Ratz, a member of the Cree Nation from Stanley Mission, Saskatchewan. Ratt is an associate professor of languages, linguistics, and literature at First Nations University of Canada. He wrote this poem in 2017 to commemorate Indigenous soldiers. We were the forgotten of the lest we forget. We were the invisible ghosts from the res. We had no obligation to join. We had to give up our treaty status. We fought, we died. Our language was used for secret messages. We stood side by side with the other soldiers in our victory. We were cast aside when we came back home. We didn't get the benefits allotted other veterans. We didn't know where to live since we gave up our treaty status. We were the forgotten of the lest we forget. We were the invisible ghosts from the res. Indigenous Canadians had to make incredible sacrifices to enlist in the Canadian Armed Forces during conflicts in the 20th century. Many Indigenous Canadians had to give up their status in order to serve, which meant that they could no longer live on reservations with their people and receive government support as an Indigenous Canadian. And because of their ethnicity, they were also not afforded the government support that was afforded to Caucasian veterans.
My name is David Ewell, and I'm a Canadian of Scottish descent. On August 3rd, 2005, the last living winner of the Victoria Cross, Britain and the Commonwealth's highest award for gallantry, passed away at the age of 91. His name was Ernest Alpheus Smith, but his friends called him Smoky. He was born in New Westminster. As a young officer in the Seaforth Highlanders of Canada, I was fortunate enough to meet him, an experience I can recall with warmth and fondness 35 years on. Smoky was a regular guy, a family guy, who in time of extreme danger and peril found within himself the strength and courage to defend his comrades and his position. His citation for the Victoria Cross reads as follows. On the night of the 21st to 22nd of October 1944 at the River Savio, in northern Italy, Private Smith was in the spirit of the attack which established a bridgehead, a crucial bridgehead over the river. Armed only with a Piat anti-tank launcher, he to disable a Panther Mark V from a distance of 30 feet. And while protecting a wounded comrade, killed 4 Panzer Grenadiers and routed others. When another tank was sent to take out his position, he used another Piat to damage it, to cause it to retreat. He then carried his wounded comrade and later joined a counterattack just to disperse the Germans still attacking the previous position. The squad destroyed 3 Panther tanks, 2 self-propelled artillery pieces, a half-track, a scout car, and a large number of German soldiers. A true act of heroism and sacrifice, to be sure. In 1997, I was fortunate enough to have won the Canadian Battle of Normandy Foundation Scholarship. And I was sent to Europe, and I got to tour World War I and World War II battlefields. And overcome by the magnitude of what I was learning, I wrote this poem. My cup was full, I thought I knew their pain and suffering, the many and the few. Their innocence and youth herald their age. With my fist clenched, I can feel the rage. The red, sweet wine of youth on verdant fields spills forward. This I cannot forget, but recall in horror. My pain is real for all to feel. Remembrance is both sad and fond. Seal my tears. Forever and ever. As a group, we remember. Looking at the crosses, unsure of what to say. My tears flow for folks unknown. I can feel their pain. Let us not think they died in vain.
My name is Diane Valencia, and I am a Canadian of Filipino descent. Together, as Delvey students, as Canadians, permanent residents, and visiting students, we commemorate the sacrifices made and ask the important question: how do we continue to honor the legacy of sacrifice in our contemporary world? We often take for granted our current way of life, our freedoms to participate in cultural and political events, and our right to live under a democratically elected government. We have a constitution with a charter which ensures all Canadians enjoy protection under the law. The many Canadians who went off to war went in the belief that such rights and freedoms were being threatened. They believed that without freedom, there can be no enduring peace. And without peace, no enduring freedom. In order to move forward into the future as people, we need to acknowledge the extreme and noble sacrifices that people have went in the past. Please stand for the last post, followed by a minute of silence. The moment of silence will end when you hear the bugle cry, Revolution.
My name is Cassandra Lind, and I am a Canadian of Filipino and Norwegian descent. In our act of remembrance, we always repeat the phrase, lest we forget, and we gather together to remember once a year. As Canadians, permanent residents, and visiting students, we have the opportunity to live our act of remembrance every day of the year. It exists in the way we treat each other, the way we show respect for one another, and compassion when we need it. To quote Canadian poet Shane Coyson, "We are cultures strung together, then woven into a tapestry, and the design is what makes us more than the sum total of our history. Because we believe in generations beyond our own, knowing now that so many of us have grown past what used to be, so we can stand here today filled with all the hope people have when they say things like, someday. We are responsible for what someday looks like. And if we move towards someday, remembering and honoring the legacy of yesterday, when someday becomes today, the world can be greater than the world we have right now. From failing hands, they've thrown the torch. Be ours to hold it high."
At this time, we're going to remain standing and we're going to sing and join our hearts, our voices together, and all that unifies who we are as a community and sing O Canada.
time to remember our veterans of war and peacekeeping. If you're so inclined, take time to find resources and individual stories about Canadians who served. This concludes our ceremony.